The Florida Panthers, in the first 40 minutes of their Saturday game against the St. Louis Blues, looked to have secured 2 points, but blowing a third period lead, and now the Panthers going out west, they got a lot of mental hurdles to climb after this. We bring Alex Slemp of Full Press NHL here on this episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, November 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and the newest show on the Locked On NHL Network, Locked On NHL Prospects. And don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Panthers on YouTube and send in a screenshot of your subscription and your 5-star rating on any podcast app that you listen to so that you could win 2 free tickets to the Florida Panthers versus New Jersey Devils game on December 21st. You could send it to me at LO_FLA Panthers on Twitter or email it to lockedonflapanthers@gmail.com. So, Cats fans, that was a major stinker on Saturday. The first 40 minutes for the Florida Panthers looked to be very promising. 2 points. Up 3-0, then up 4-1, and then just the last 20 periods, a major collapse for the Florida Panthers. And it's something that we've seen a lot, not just the Florida Panthers, but a lot of other teams. It was the second blown 3-goal lead in the same day with Edmonton Oilers coming back against the New York Rangers Saturday afternoon. And speaking of that, this will be a great time for me to bring in my guest of the show who covers both the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. It is Alex Slemp of Full Press NHL and the Full Press and Panthers podcast. Alex, welcome back to the show.
Armando, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And great. And I want to say, even though the Canadian national team for soccer for the World Cup is has 2 losses, it still must be very exciting for the Canadian national team really to be part of the World Cup. And when Chris Johnston tweeted Davies, I thought he was talking about Florida Panthers prospect Josh Davies, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh wait, Canada's in the World Cup.
Yeah, different Davies right there, but I could see the confusion. It's been a long time since the men's national team for Canada has been in that World Cup. So yeah, the country's excited to be there. There's a lot of good energy around it. I mean, they're officially eliminated now following the loss to Croatia, but the people back home, they're really excited just to be there. And I mean, just I don't know, each game is building towards the next World Cup where, Canada, US, Mexico get a host. So it's fun. It's fun for the soccer fans over there right now.
Yeah, so and the USA, they're in a win and in situation on Tuesday when they face Iran. A draw or a loss, eliminated. So they don't even have to pay attention to the other game that's going on at the same time, England versus Wales. But let's talk about the most recent game for the Florida Panthers. They no Aleksander Barkov for the Panthers, non-COVID illness. We'll talk a little bit about the Panthers without Barkov in segment number 2, but now 0-1-1 without Sasha Barkov on the season. But even without Sasha Barkov, they've proven that they could still go on stretches with scoring multiple goals in a certain stretch. I mean, with the Dallas game, I mean, it was a product of them being down 4 goals at the end of the first period, but they still showed that ability that they can find that secondary scoring even without the captain. And of course, Matthew Tkachuk has been a great story for the Panthers, a guy that's just fit right in. But even with Barkov out, getting a 3-goal lead multiple times, just the Panthers and just their inability to just, I believe it was a focus issue really in the third period. Really, that really got them to dropping a point. I mean, it's funny because the Panthers got 1 point on Saturday, but it feels like they dropped both points based on the monumental collapse on Saturday.
Yeah, 100%. That was a game that Florida should have won, right? It was really just this 8-minute mental lapse in the third period allowed, the Blues to get back in it. I thought they played a great game right up until then, but then as Marie said at the end of the game, he's like, once it got to 4-2, the team was playing more tentative, right? They weren't pressing on the puck as much. They were kind of sitting back, almost playing this like cautious hockey that we're not really used to seeing from the Panthers. And it's true. That style of play is what directly led to the third goal. Kyrou just came in all alone on the right side, ahead of the D, or getting behind the D there. And then on the fourth goal, it was Leddy just coasted in. There's four Panthers players around him. He just coasted in, got the puck into the zone, and then turns into a goal. So up until that point in the third period, the Panthers were playing great hockey, and they had multiple chances to put it away. I mean, Nick Cousins got denied on that like wide open look in the third period. Carter Verhaeghe missed that brilliant cross crease feed from Lundell. I think that was late in the second period. Thomas Greiss was giving up rebound after rebound. I mean, it was just the win was there for the taking, and that's what makes it so frustrating. And like you said, even though they got 1 point, it really feels like they lost 2.
Yeah, and Eric Stahl also had an opportunity with Thomas Greiss out of his net, and then Thomas Greiss recovering as well. I think that was in the first period, if I'm not mistaken. But it's funny, through 40 minutes, I was thinking first star of the game, the entire blue line for the Florida Panthers, because on the Ekblad goal, the Spinorama goal, Gus Forsling gets in the passing lane in the Panther zone, and that creates a rush for the Florida Panthers going the other way. Radko Gudas had 5 shots on goal through the first 40 minutes, and the broadcast mentioned how 7 shots on goal was gonna be tying his career high, and then he's a big part of that goal that on the bump to Vladimir Tarasenko that led to the rush, where Sam Reinhart as well had a great first 40 minutes as well. Both of the stretch pass to Carter Verhaeghe to create that goal, his 12th of the season, Carter Verhaeghe, and then the right after the PK, which NHL.com still has that as a shorthanded goal right now, even though it was just after the PK. The Panthers were just not allowing the Blues to get that many shots on the power play as well. They got just as many shots shorthanded versus the Blues power play as well. So just so many things were going right, and I was really crediting that blue line. Just with this collapse, it feels like, I don't want to say a wasted performance by the blue line, but it's just a missed opportunity the way I see it.
100% really is a missed opportunity, because that blue line was fantastic. They came out in the first, they were pushing. The first 2 goals were by the defense. That play by Forsling to initiate that rush for Ekblad's goal, I don't think that was talked about enough. That was a brilliant play. And then Radko Gudas being hard on the blue line, being nice and aggressive. He keeps that puck in, fires it in. You get up 2. It's a tough one to swallow. And as Gudas said at the end of it, he's like, these games happen. He's like, we can't always be the one on the, coming back. It's going to happen to us. And it's just one of those ones you have to, you learn from it, and then just kind of forget about that game.
Yeah, and with the way the Panthers were closing in on their gaps, it resulted in like such a big difference in takeaways as well. The Florida Panthers, even on the losing end, were 24-6 in favor of when it came to takeaways for this team. But like we said, a mental lapse for the Panthers. 19-4 shots on goal advantage for the St. Louis Blues in that third period. And you already mentioned where the Florida Panthers were puck watching on Pavel Buchnevich and Nick Leddy, allowing Vladimir Tarasenko to just be all alone on Spencer Knight. And then the first 2 goals, I mean, the first one going off Colin White's skate, and then Brendan Saad being right on the right there to get it to a 3-1 game at the time, and then that one shot that was off the end boards, and then Ryan O'Reilly was there to deflect it. It was like, okay, not going to put so much on Spencer, but just but you mentioned as well, there's one guy on the Blues you can't let loose, and that's Jordan Kyrou. And next year's the start of his major extension, $65 million as well, and it happened in overtime where they let him loose. And of course, Carter Verhaeghe, of course, with 3-on-3 hockey, your matchups are going to be a little different. You're likely not going to always have a defenseman back there to break up some passes as well. But Carter Verhaeghe, as soon as Jordan Kyrou got a step, it was over for Verhaeghe and Spencer Knight on that one.
Yeah, man, that's tough. Brilliant play by the Blues there. That I believe it was Krug with that big stretch pass up to Kyrou, and I like how it was Verhaeghe that was chasing it down, right?
Yes.
I love what he did because he didn't take a penalty. He took the whole forehand side away, and he just had that blocked. And I thought while he was doing that, it would let Spencer Knight was going to be able to pick up that Kyrou's only option was to go backhand on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was played really well by Verhaeghe. And I don't know. It's also Kyrou. I mean, he's good. You can be like, oh, here, you only get this side. He still can find a way to score. He's an elite player. And it was just an elite play. But yeah, I don't really fault Spencer Knight on that performance. Like you said, the first 2 goals, it's a tough bounce. He kind of loses it on the first one. Not going to fault him there. The Ryan O'Reilly behind the net, bank it off the inside of his leg. I think he could have 100 more tries at that shot and not get that go. So it's tough there. And like you said earlier, I think after those 2 goals, it really just became a mental thing, and they just kind of lost it and let that game get away from them because yeah, you ever seen those things when you watch a game and you see the deserve to win-o-meter? You ever seen those?
Money puck.
Yeah, money puck. There it is. Yeah, this is one of those ones. Florida deserve to win. They're maxing out, redlining the deserve to win-o-meter. So this is a tough loss for the Panthers fans. So and they got a bit of a tough road swing here. So hopefully they can bounce back and get some good wins on the road here.
Yeah, and Torrey Krug was the guy who assisted on both those Jordan Kyrou goals. I mean, he was the Alex Pietrangelo replacement when he left for Vegas. So he's not Pietrangelo, but man, I know he lost to them in the Stanley Cup final a few years ago, but you kind of see why they went after someone like Torrey Krug in free agency just a few years ago when they lost Pietrangelo. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to preview the 5-game road trip for the Panthers, specifically Monday's game versus the Edmonton Oilers. But first, we're going to tell you all about Simply Safe. If you ever thought about securing your home with home security, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Panthers listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you don't want to miss it. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that a threat is real, so you can get priority police response. Simply Safe is a whole home security with advanced sensors of every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and out. Smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real. Even in hazardous sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats in your home. 24/7 monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNHL. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Love it.
Second segment here on this Monday, November 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So doesn't get any easier for the Panthers from here after dropping a point. Currently out of a playoff position, so this makes it hurt a little more. And past our benchmark of American Thanksgiving, pretty much the first one, you kind of see where your team is at the time. And start of a 5-game road trip for the Panthers. A back-to-back on Monday and Tuesday against Edmonton and then Calgary. Matthew Tkachuk will be making his return on Tuesday in Calgary. Vancouver, then Seattle on Saturday, and then Winnipeg on Tuesday. Paul Maurice will be making his return to Winnipeg. So a lot of returns for the Florida Panthers and some as far as their coach and their superstar winger. But Alex, this game against the Edmonton Oilers, we spoke at the top how the Edmonton Oilers had a 3-goal comeback against the New York Rangers, the first one of that day, and then the last time these two teams faced off against each other. Just the Florida Panthers were doing such a great job of containing Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl for the most part. The point that Connor McDavid got wasn't until the empty net goal to seal the game for the Oilers, and then a strip of the puck on Aleksander Barkov by Leon Draisaitl got Warren Foegele to for their third goal of the game in that one. But Stuart Skinner was the story of that last matchup for the Edmonton Oilers. Like, so many shots. And of course the analytics say that the expected goals with the Florida Panthers and creating their chances as well. And the Tyson Barrie show as well in that one specifically. When the goal is to stop McDavid and Draisaitl, but your third pairing defenseman is getting goals, it's just a recipe for a loss probably. And with how Stuart Skinner performed, it was a recipe for disaster for the Panthers on that one.
Yeah, that was a tough loss for him because, as you said, they did a brilliant job containing the superstars, right? McDavid, like you said, his only point came on that empty netter, and then Draisaitl had one to set up the game winner. And yeah, 40 save performance by Stuart Skinner. He's probably getting the start again on Monday. Had a fantastic game. You look at that, and there's so many positives that the Panthers can take away from that. And I think, again, they just got unlucky because anytime that you face the Oilers, it's always, how do we contain McDavid? How do we contain Draisaitl? The Oilers, 45 goals that they've scored have come from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Draisaitl, and McDavid. And now with Kane hurt, they only have 9 other goals scored from the rest of their team. Okay?
Oof.
This is top-heavy offense, and the Oilers struggle to get any sort of secondary scoring so far this year. So when you can contain the superstars, you really should win against the Oilers because they just don't have, their secondary scoring backing them up. And unfortunately, Tyson Barrie decides to get hot, gets going. It's like, of course. So just, bad timing for the Panthers, great timing for the Oilers fans. Happy to see him going. But I think that the way that the Panthers played, the script that they had, and they're like, okay, this is how we're going to bring it to the Oilers. They could do the exact same thing Monday night, and they should see a better result. The Oilers haven't been that great at home. They're scoring goals, and their power play, I believe, is operating at 31% at home, but they're still below 500 at home. They still allow almost 4 goals against at home. They're not as dominant as they used to be. And so I think that there's an opportunity here for the Panthers to come in, first game of the road trip, and steal 2 points there in Edmonton.
Yeah, looking at the Oilers home record right now, 5-6-0 at home right now for the Edmonton Oilers, second in the league in power play percentage. So that's definitely one to hopefully stop. I mean, we were talking about even previewing Saturday's game against St. Louis. I mean, the key of that one was to get on the scoring sheet on the power play against St. Louis, one of the worst PK units, and of course now the script flips to can you get your PK going against the Edmonton Oilers, and special teams has been a lot better for the Florida Panthers as of late. So that's a big credit to them and the adjustments that they've made despite that collapse as well. A few notes for the Florida Panthers, and is Aleksander Barkov was once again missing from the Florida Panthers. And I just want to say, if you're coming on the show and expecting me to talk about any hockey player's personal life on anything that's going on off the ice, this is not the podcast for me to talk about what Aleksander Barkov might be going on off the ice. But so Aleksander Barkov's going to be missing the first 2 games of this road trip. So Eetu Luostarinen was placed back at center on that third line. Of course, Bennett and Tkachuk are going to be manning that top line for a little while, at least until the third game of the road trip. At least that's the expectation. The Panthers say it's a non-COVID illness. So the second time that Barkov has had that, Maurice talked about a possible spread on the team. And a little worry. So Alexi Heponiemi has been called up for the Florida Panthers from Charlotte on an emergency basis. So in an emergency basis, for anyone wondering, does not affect the salary cap because the Panthers had around like $230K of cap space going into Sunday. So it's like, how is this going to work? But emergency basis. So it's going to be only a short-term thing. The Florida Panthers won't be using 19 skaters. Even though that's a very tough place to be, but there's actually a little bit of a benefit. I was actually talking about with the guys over at Panther Parkway about the benefit of what 20 skaters can do. It's just that you're not always having a revolving door around that 13th forward or that 7th defenseman as well, and that you have the opportunity to continue to be with certain line mates instead of a different one every single time. What do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to keep the consistency in your lines because it helps with that chemistry. You're not trying to constantly feel out another line mate. It also, another thing is it helps with line changes and avoiding too many men penalties. You see that happen when you got like the extra player. It's sometimes you see a guy and you're like, oh, that's my line. And you hop out and you're like, oh, no, because it's like he was on that line, now he's going up to this other one to play, and it creates confusion. I remember that one in my hockey days, and that was always frustrating because then you take like such silly penalties, and I mean that's not what you want to do against the Oilers here. But bringing up Heppo and the Emmy, I'm excited for it. We've only seen 2 looks at him this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Against the Ducks and the Hurricanes. I saw he's averaging 10 minutes of ice, but I've liked what I've seen out of him. I would love to see him get a little bit more of an opportunity. He just has an amazing skill set, and I think he's done well at the AHL level. And I would just really love to see what he can do given the opportunity here in Florida, because I mean he is a prospect that I think Panthers are gonna get used to seeing. In the coming seasons, he will be a staple on this team. So I would like to see a little bit more of a look from him.
Yeah, and also an opportunity for Lundell to get more top 6 minutes as well. We saw a little bit of it on the power play when Aaron Ekblad was out and Brandon Montour was hurt a little bit as well, and Matthew Tkachuk being suspended for 2 games. So there's opportunities for players to be back in a position where they were just a few weeks ago, which was funny enough on a West Coast trip that all that a little bit of that adversity happened for the Panthers. So definitely a chance for those guys and all. But as far as the Oilers, you were talking about Stuart Skinner getting the start again. Jack Campbell got the start for the last 2 games. Talk about the goalie situation in Edmonton, because they signed Jack Campbell to that contract. Stuart Skinner is still a very young goalie, and maybe, who knows, maybe the goalie of the future for Edmonton. What's the pulse like for Edmonton and the goalie department?
Yeah, well, fans right now are not the happiest with Campbell's performance. Obviously, rightfully so. He's struggled a lot since since coming to Edmonton. But thank goodness Stuart Skinner has been playing as well as he has. Otherwise, this Oilers team could be looking very bad, right now. So, but the talk around the team is that they're not worried about Jack Campbell's play right now. They know that as a goalie switching teams, it's an adjustment period, and you'd like to think that after the amount of starts he's had, that you would have figured it out by now. But I guess sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Goalies are different than players. They're very streaky, and sometimes they can really just get in their own head. Campbell has proven that he can be a starter and that he is a good goalie, and he still is that. And it's just about finding his game and finding his confidence. The coach has not lost trust in him, and the great thing is the Skinner's been playing so well that it's giving the coach Woodcroft there the luxury of being able to be patient with Campbell and help him to find his game. I think the Oilers will be fine in the goalie department, and we'll have a fantastic 1-2 punch. Right now, Oilers fans are really excited seeing how well Skinner is playing because he will be the future. And I think it kind of, when Campbell signed that 5-year deal, they were like, "Whoa, isn't Skinner gonna be our future?" That seems like a long time to sign him. But with the way the salary cap is going to move up, and $5 million won't be really that much for a backup 3 years down the road. I think we're probably going to see Campbell not serve that whole 5-year thing. I might be getting off topic here, but I don't think he's going to be there for the full 5. I could see it being 3. Stuart Skinner takes over that crease. I think we'll see a dynamic 1A, 1B sort of tandem from them for the next 3 years, and then I don't know, kind of go from there. But I wouldn't be as concerned. They're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and Stuart Skinner being 24 years old and a very promising prospect for the Panthers, just like how Spencer Knight is a promising prospect for Florida. Now the splits for Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight are officially split 50-50 at 11. I think Sergei Bobrovsky is going to get the start against the Edmonton Oilers because even though Knight has started both the games against Edmonton and Calgary at home, back-to-back, of course, one goalie has to go one night and the other, and I think Bobrovsky is going to get the net for the Panthers on Monday, because the last time the Florida Panthers played at Edmonton, Bobrovsky got a shutout, a 6-0 win for the Florida Panthers, where the Sergei Bobrovsky had 17 saves in the first period, which really carried the Panthers. So give it a little bit of a confidence boost for hopefully Sergei Bobrovsky, as we don't, nothing confirmed, but that's going to be my guess on who starts on Monday for the Panthers. But in segment number 3, we are going to be talking about the lines and who we expect or who we think is going to win on Monday night between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, esports. We got it all at BetOnline. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And speaking of games starting, Florida, Edmonton, Monday night, a rare Monday game for the Panthers. 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, Valley Sports, Florida. And the Panthers are actually a road favorite at -110. Of course, we've spoken about the inconsistencies of the Edmonton Oilers. Very top heavy. Another part of their top heavy scoring is former Florida Panther draft pick Zach Hyman as well. That's another high score for the Edmonton Oilers. Recently signed a free agent contract from the Toronto Maple Leafs just 2 off seasons ago. But I think it's very important, Alex, for the Florida Panthers after that letdown that they had on Saturday. I think you got to get somewhere between 6 to 7 points out of 10 in this 5-game road trip. I think every single game in this one is even winnable. Of course, Vancouver's going through their own drama off the ice with their coach, Bo Horvat, whether he's going to get extended or traded. The chemistry between Jonathan Huberdeau and the Calgary Flames, along with Matthew Tkachuk's return. Seattle still being a new team, which the Florida Panthers haven't beaten Seattle yet. And of course, Winnipeg looking a lot better with Connor Hellebuyck looking like that he could be back to Vezina form as well. And looks like that maybe they really did need a new voice in Winnipeg after Paul Maurice resigned. But 7 out of 10 points is very important for the Panthers. I mean, I'll take 6 even for this team. But who do you think comes out on top on Monday night between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers?
If I'm putting my money on anyone, it's the Panthers. The way the Panthers play their game, they're a come out the gate quick. high volume offense, getting all those shots on. I think that that could help maybe Skinner settle in. He likes that kind of thing. I think most goalies do. But the Oilers typically start slow. They start on the heels. I think the Panthers come out heavy, get on the board early. It gets the Oilers chasing. That's exactly where the Panthers want him. And as long as they stay disciplined in that first period and don't give the Oilers any chances, I like Florida in this one. I would be taking Florida.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know what kind of odds, but I
mm,
mean, I like Florida in this.
minus 110 are the odds for the Florida Panthers.
Okay.
And just looking at when the Florida Panthers score first, 9-4-1 when they score first, and their only losses where they've lost this season where they've had the lead going into the third period were both overtime losses for the Panthers, and just the most recent one on Saturday, and then the other one prior to that was their loss against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So really important for the Florida Panthers to get off to a fast start. It's funny because even on the road, actually, the Panthers, when they score first, they're actually under 500 according to Hockey Reference on the road, and this is on the road. So the Panthers, they haven't really been able to get so much consistency on the road just yet. But this couldn't you couldn't ask for a better opportunity for the Panthers to hopefully get kick started for their for what's hopefully the next benchmark in New Year's. So I mean, when you talk about scoring, they're -5 on the road as well. So that's their goal differential on the road, and they even outshot their opposition by over 100 too. So I trying to do the math in my head, 116 that they've outshot opponents on the road this season, but still a -5 goal differential and a 3-4-0 record when they score first.
I mean, that's just bad puck luck right there.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, you talk about some of the games that they've had where putting a lot of pressure on goalies. I mean, the Arizona games, for example, the first game of their most recent West Coast trip. Carter Hart going off in their game against the Philadelphia Flyers as well, and now the Philadelphia Flyers have now had 3 10-game losing streaks in the last calendar year. So maybe the issue isn't
off.
coaching after all there, but
Hmm.
so it's just you look at that and then you say, how did the Panthers lose? But of course, so much turnover as well for this team as well that our expectations just can't be from 58 win President's Trophy
No.
winning Florida Panthers.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, we need to be a little bit more realistic. Yeah, there are huge personnel changes coming through here. You can't expect to have that 9-0 start they had last
Mhm.
season. Yeah, the 58 wins. That's not happening this year. But that's not to say this is a bad team. I still think it's a really good team, and I think they've been playing good hockey. And the fact that only one game under 500 at this point in the year, with everything they've had to go through, like I said, personnel changes, couple injuries to some key guys, Ekblad and Barkov missing some time. The fact that the Panthers are still near 500, testament to how good this team is.
Yeah, and like I said, no, this wouldn't be a better way than to do it on a West Coast trip. Starting Monday night in Edmonton, then Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, and then Winnipeg. So definitely, I hope that you Panther fans are able to stay up for these games. And if you don't happen to be staying up for these games, you could always tune into Locked On Panthers. Well, I'll be staying up for every game. Alex will be staying up for every game as well as we will be bringing you coverage of the Florida Panthers road trip out in Western Canada. But Alex, I want to say thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Plug your stuff. Where can they find you on Twitter, and can they find your written work as well as your podcast?
Yeah, so as Armando said, I'm with Full Press NHL. So at fullpresshockey.com, you can catch all of my written work there. Put in a podcast attached to all of my Well, it's a series that I do called Takeaways, so you can always catch my podcast there, which I attach as a recap sort of thing after every Panthers game. You can go to my Twitter at Alex Slemp. I'm always retweeting my stuff there, and like to get on and do some live tweeting during games as well. So that's fullpresshockey.com and my Twitter at Alex Slemp.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you once again, and I hope to have you back on soon.
Oh man, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to all the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and the newest show on the Locked On NHL network, Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today brings you a 20-minute or less podcast on the entirety of the sports scene. You'll get some inclusive interviews and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Alex Slemp, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.